Hey everyone, and welcome to another video. We're going to be going over Funeral Moon and its different kind of play lines. I've been seeing a lot of questions kind of regarding where Funeral Moon fits and what sort of things you can do with it, so I'll be going over some of that. I will probably miss some lines, so if you see any that I miss, let me know down in the comments, and I'll potentially make another video with all the updates. There's going to be every section timestamped in the video, so if you want to skip to something specific, just go ahead and click on that timestamp. And other than that, I hope you guys enjoy. Okay, so the first thing we can do is the most simple. Banish Funeral Moon for turn, generating 1 rune chant. Then playing Funeral Moon, generating a 2nd rune chant, and that's the turn. Now, what else we can do is, again, Banish Funeral Moon to create the 1 rune chant, pay 1 life to attack with Flail, spending the 1 rune chant. We have now attacked and paid life off of Flail. We can then instant Funeral Moon, generating a 2nd rune chant. Well, I guess a 1st rune chant for the next turn. Something to note here that's interesting. If our opponent is at, say, 1 life, and we're at, say, 4 life, when we attack with the Flail and we trigger the rune chant, this is a trigger that goes on the stack that we can respond to. So we can instant Funeral Moon because, again, we've lost life from the Flail. We can pay the life to Vincent because it is a shadow non-attack, and make this rune chant unpreventable, killing our opponent. This can also be done if for some reason they are at 2 and we have 2 Funeral Moons in Banish. The important part here is that you need to space them out correctly. You cannot play Funeral Moon and Funeral Moon, paying life for both of them. That won't work. It will make the next rune chant unpreventable twice. So, what we need to do is do the first, pay the life, let that trigger, making a rune chant. Go into 1 rune chant active. They take the 1 unpreventable. This rune chant goes on the stack. We, again, play instant Funeral Moon, pay the life. This rune chant is now unpreventable, and they die. All right, another thing Funeral Moon can do is it can just enable more rune chants for the next turn. In this case, we'll showcase a Deathly Wail just because that is probably the largest setup that you can get with this. Because you can banish Deathly Wail to get a 3rd rune chant again, play it if they take the damage, instant Funeral Moon to pay the life, to essentially generate 3 rune chants on the Deathly Wail close. You can do this also if it wasn't, say, a Deathly Wail. However, it would be less rune chants because you wouldn't necessarily be paying the life for it. So, for instance, we can banish a Widespread Annihilation, attack for 10. If they take any damage from this, we can close the chain and just instant out a Funeral Moon to just generate 1 rune chant for the next turn. This isn't super exciting. It's not the crazy plays that you can really pull off with Funeral Moon, but it's something to remember because also Funeral Moon can be played out of Banish. So if for some reason you either hit a Widespread Ruin or something like that where it comes off the top, maybe you're playing an assassin and they banish Funeral Moon off the top, you can still use it and it'll prevent it from giving you the blood debt, and it will help set up the next turn. Because if for some reason you have like this scenario where let's say you were to draw a Widespread Ruin, I think one's in here. Yeah. So you drew a Widespread Ruin and no other rune chant generation throughout the turn, or let's say you had to block out with the rest of your cards. The one rune chant from Funeral Moon at least set up the Widespread Ruin to be able to attack. If you didn't have it, then to be able to send that Widespread Ruin, you're required to have another blue. So that's something that can be considered. You don't necessarily have to play the Funeral Moon on your turn. So in the case that, say, we have Funeral Moon and Widespread Ruin, and 2 cards that we blocked with. We took damage because it leaked over, and they go to end their turn. At the end of their turn, we can still respond. We can instant Funeral Moon, generating 1 rune chant, and then at the start of our turn, banish Widespread Ruin to send Widespread Ruin with the 2nd rune chant. All right, so the next thing we can do is use Funeral Moon as an enabler for a follow-up attack. So, in this case, we have 2 rune chants, we have a Widespread Destruction and Banish, and we have a Mauve Skies, Deathly Wail, and Funeral Moon in hand. So we will banish the Deathly Wail to be at 3 rune chants. Play the Mauve Skies, play the Deathly Wail. So at the moment, 3 rune chants have gone off. A Deathly Wail with a red Mauve Skies is threatening 3 more rune chants if it hits. A lot of times in these scenarios, I've noticed that the opponents do not like pitching for AB if they really don't need to. So, in this situation, they are not threatened with lethal at that very moment. So, they're going to assume, 3 rune chants, it's not the biggest deal. I'll just give them 1 rune chant for the next turn and call it a day. So they'll take the 3 rune chants. They will double block to prevent the Deathly Wail hit off of the Mauve Skies, because the Mauve Skies is a guaranteed Widespread Destruction. So, obviously they don't want it to hit. Now, before you close the combat chain, the opponent has taken 1 damage. We can instant Funeral Moon, giving us 1 rune chant. We can pay the 1 life for Vinset, and then close the combat chain. Now, both of us have taken a damage or lost life, so Deathly Wail generates 2 rune chants. Now, we can send the Widespread Destruction, threatening the additional lethal damage and ripping more cards out of their hand. This is only because we're able to instant and pay for the Funeral Moon, giving us the on-hurt effect, and then providing an additional attack for the same turn. All right, this next one's a little bit weird, and it's something that can be kind of utilized in different scenarios depending on the cards you have at hand. So, let's say you have a Widespread Destruction and Banish, a Funeral Moon in hand, a Revel in hand, and an Arsenal, and 2 rune chants. Start of your turn, you banish a Funeral Moon, giving us a 3rd rune chant. Then, we'll play out the Widespread Destruction. The Widespread Destruction will trigger the 3 rune chants and itself. In this scenario, with a Widespread Destruction, it's kind of up in the air whether or not the opponent wants to block it. If they have an Arsenal they really want to save, maybe they'll just block out all the damage. If they don't, if they have no Arsenal or it isn't worth it for them to save it, maybe they won't block any of the damage and they'll just take it if they're at a decent life total. So in the instance, let's say they're at like 17. And they just say, you know what? We have a stronger hand. This is just 9 damage. It's not that big a deal. So they take the 9. Down to 8. Okay. Now, before closing the combat chain, we can instant a Funeral Moon. And we pay 1 life. We'll make a rune chant. And then we can close the combat chain. Both of us have lost life. So, Widespread Destruction trigger, we banish a Widespread Annihilation out of Arsenal. Then we can use the Tunic resource to put a counter on Spellbound Creepers to instant out a Revel in Runeblood. This will generate 4 more rune chants because even though we played Funeral Moon as an instant, it is still a non-attack action. So we've played both an attack action card and a non-attack action card. And then the way Go Again works, if you're not familiar. So Go Again is shorthand for gain 1 action point. However, you can't have multiple instances of Go Again. So at most, a card will generally only gain you 1 action point. However, because Revel is played at an instant and still has Go Again, we will still gain an action point from 0 to 1. So it will be treated as if the Widespread Destruction had Go Again. So it will be at 1 action point. And then we can send the Widespread Annihilation with that second action point for an additional 11 and a guaranteed taking out of their hand. Both because we'll have 1 unpreventable off of this rune chant and the Widespread Destruction damage has already gone through. So it kind of can surprise your opponent in these kind of scenarios. Or in the case that you have the same cards, let's say maybe you had a Widespread Destruction in hand and you had an Annihilation in Banish. You can play the Annihilation, which is a little bit more difficult because opponents, when they see an Annihilation, kind of go one of two ways. It's either block it out entirely, all 10 damage, and just accept that they just dump their hand into it, or try to save the hand and just accept that they're banishing a card. If they take the damage and accept that they're banishing a card, then we can do our play where now, again, Funeral Moon, pay the life, then close the chain, which will banish the Widespread Destruction, use the Tunic resource to put a counter on Creepers, instant the Revel, and again, now attack with the Widespread Destruction. This can be done similar to how Deathly Whale was in the previous example. With a Mauvrion Skies, you don't need to Creepers the Revel. I'm just demonstrating it because it is much more explosive. It kind of catches the opponent even more off guard, and it's something that maybe you might not have thought of, or you don't see at the moment. All right, so this final example is quite strange. It's very circumstantial, and it really ends up mattering probably once in your Vinset career, maybe twice. But when it does, it might win you the game. So what is going to happen here is, let's say our Creepers have broken. So we don't have a way to instant out our attack or non-attack actions. We have a Tunic resource up, we have 2 rune chants, and we have a Deathly Whale and Revel in Runeblood hand. In Banish, we have a Widespread Annihilation, a Widespread Destruction, and 2 Funeral Moons. So, at the start of turn, we will banish our Deathly Whale. We have 3 rune chants. We will send the 3 rune chants with the Deathly Whale. And our opponent, let's say they're quite high. Let's say they're at, like, I don't know, 22. And we are at 7. So we are quite behind in terms of life. Generally, when you have a situation like this, where they know that we're going to be taking essentially 4 blood debt, we have no go again. We have one card in hand, and they're at a huge life disparity. They'll just take the damage. They'll just say, okay, I'll take the however much, and in this case, it is 9. I'll take the 9, and I'll just send it back at you. So they take 9, 13. They're still almost double our life total. But what they don't realize is we can do some really strange things. So, without closing the combat chain, we can use Tunic Resource to activate the effect of Grimoire of the Haunt. We can banish Grimoire, making an Eloquence token. Now, what an Eloquence token will do is, when you play an on-attack action card, destroy this and it gets go again. That card gets go again. But the Eloquence token trigger goes on the stack, and it is not an if you destroy this, the card gets go again. Those are two separate, essentially, lines of text. So the destroy and the go again are not conditional on each other. You can get go again even if this does not exist, if it has been triggered. So what we can do is we can play a Funeral Moon at instant speed, again, because they lost life. We can, the Eloquence trigger, or token will trigger, destroying the Eloquence and giving it the Funeral Moon go again. However, again, this is a trigger and they are independent of each other. So what you can do is now play the second Funeral Moon in response, again triggering the Eloquence token because it has not been destroyed yet. The Eloquence token will be destroyed, giving the first Funeral Moon go again, generating a rune chant. We now have one action point because the Funeral Moon had go again at instant speed, essentially acting as if the Deathly Wail had go again. However, the second Funeral Moon and Eloquence trigger are still on the stack. It does not matter that you cannot again destroy the Eloquence token because those are separate, but it will still give the Funeral Moon go again. So the Funeral Moon can also get go again. Both Funeral Moons have been given go again by a single Eloquence token, giving us a second rune chant, giving us also a second action point. Now we can close the chain, generating 2 rune chants because we paid a life for, or if you didn't want to, if you wanted to pay the life, you could, generating 4, or you don't necessarily have to and just generate 3. However, in this kind of scenario, I'd probably always recommend the 4, even if it is just 1 extra damage. That's still relevant. So we have 2 rune chants, or 4 rune chants and 2 action points. We can now play one of the widespreads. This kind of is up to you what you want to threaten first. It really wouldn't matter because I feel like an opponent would know that both of them are coming in. So we will send, actually it wouldn't matter, I'm sorry. So we would send Widespread Destruction first because we don't have an arsenal. And we've already paid in the scenario life, so we don't want to banish the card out of our hand. So we will attack with Widespread Destruction for another 10 damage. This one, let's say they block this out. They use their whole hand because they're threatened now that they know there's another attack potentially coming in. We're at 1 action point. We can close the chain. If they had an arsenal, they lost it because they've already taken damage from the Deathly Wail combat chain. We have 1 action point We can then play the Revel in Runeblood, generating another 4 rune chance with a go again, so we still have 1 action point, and coming in with a Widespread Annihilation for another 10. So from that Grimoire of the Haunt with the Eloquence token and the 2 Funeral Moons, they gave us 2 additional action points to be able to set up for a turn that turned a 9 damage turn into a 29 damage turn. So this is a little bit more like, again, niche. I've never actually played this in a game before, especially with several Funeral Moons. You can still use the Grimoire of the Haunt on a single Funeral Moon if you only need 1 go again, but I kind of wanted to showcase here the kind of explosiveness of potentially having the multiple Funeral Moons to be able to cast at instant speed. And you can also do this with Requiem of the Damned. That will also make an Eloquence token and can be played at instant speed if anyone has lost life. The Grimoire, I believe, is probably more common in most decks than Requiem. So that's why I use that as the example. But again, this can be kind of extended or reduced depending on what is in your hand, what you have in Banish, how much you really need to play into it. But it's an example of what you can do with it, adding 20 damage to a 9 damage turn. All right, so that's Funeral Moon. I hope everyone enjoyed. If I missed anything that you saw or that you've played before, let me know in the comments. And also, let me know what your craziest Funeral Moon plays have been. Have you been able to pull off the multiple Eloquence, multiple go again, multiple action points to be able to send a bunch of attacks in a turn? Because that'd be pretty sick, because I don't think I've done that. So again, yeah, let me know in the comments, and I'll see y'all on the next one.